And I know now we're getting older. The world we built is slipping through our fingers. We're running out of time. But you are the one I've chosen, and I won't lay still, living left behind, imprisoned by this love. I could feel your heartbeat, I could feel somewhere you're looking down. I could feel your heartbeat, I could feel somewhere you're looking down. 'Cause it's you I'm loving, and it's you that I want.
When the spell breaks, I know that you will leave me, and I can't take the chance. I'm done thinking that your love might help me to survive, 'cause I know that your good night is your goodbye.
Gentlemen, Welcome to PAX. Please take your seats and silence all cell phones. Our program begins now.
Hello. Good morning. There are a lot of people here. There is a full house. Just gonna jam to this music for a few more seconds. Okay, sorry, I was really excited. Welcome everyone from PAX. We are very excited to be here. We are both extremely nervous, so when Koji comes out, don't scare him too bad. We don't want him to run away. But no, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for everybody that's watching at home on Twitch. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And my name is Matt Hilton. I'll be trying to rein Koji in during this panel and not get sued by unhappy people. So, but please, this is the Tales of Localization and Lore panel, or as we like to call it, Between Two Ferns. The sequel. As you can see, we have our lovely Fern here, but we need another Fern to come out to the stage. So if you guys could help me welcome to the stage, Fern Halls, Mr. Michael Christopher Koji Fox. All right, I got some music to play him in.
Matt. What's up with this track?
This is like your epic entrance music. You're like the boss.
Like
coming
some
in.
evil Garlean that's come to destroy everyone. And can we get something better?
Okay, let's try.
Yeah, there we go.
Is that better?
Let's turn it up.
Okay, sorry. But no, yeah, welcome, Koji Fox. Again, this is Between Two Ferns, so...
Wait. Dude, I mean, in Las Vegas, the middle of the desert, you were able to get a fern. And here we are in Washington. There's literally like 1 million ferns outside our hotel.
Couldn't find a one.
And what?
They were sold out of ferns.
So, what?
Yeah, everywhere I went.
And so where did you get this?
So what I ended up doing is I made, I asked nicely, I didn't make. My wife worked very hard on this artwork all through the night.
What?
She didn't sleep.
You couldn't find a fern at Target, and then you make your wife stay up all night to draw this beautiful fern?
But the joke works, so that's all that matters.
Next.
All right, well, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of exciting things for you to reveal.
Let's do it.
In moderation. Let's jump right in.
All right. Okay, so I want to talk about a little bit about who I am. I know a lot of you already know who I am, but we got a lot of new users with the release of Stormblood, and so I just want to touch upon who I am, a little bit about my background. It says here, translation direction and world lore creator. Astute players may have noticed that where in the Heavensward opening credits, both Oda-san and I were listed as world lore creators. This time, I'm listed as translation direction, so you may be thinking, is Koji off lore? Is he not doing that anymore? The reason being is because Oda-san was promoted to main scenario writer. Congratulations, Mr. Oda-san. And along with, I can't forget, Natsuko Ishikawa, who also worked on half of the main scenario. Those two great writers that handled all the stuff for Stormblood. And because they got pushed to main scenario writer, that left just me under World Lore Creator. But I didn't want people thinking that it was just me creating lore, because Oda-san still does that, doing 90% of the stuff. I just go in there to help him fill in things, add puns, stuff like that. The important stuff. And so I decided to go with translation direction. I didn't go with localization lead because actually the localization lead is this guy named John Crow that we've had on the project since 1.2. And it turns out that this time all of the main scenario, he handled that. He's a consummate pro, a great guy. I love you, John Crow. All right. I also have Lyrical Poet on here because I got to get in my Vanilla Ice reference.
Sure.
And
As you all
then
want to do.
Legal Department Nightmare. This time, again, actually, the legal department guy came over to Japan. It's like his first time in Japan is like, I need to have a meeting with you, Koji. It's like, oh my God, he's oh my God. I think they all but guaranteed litigation this time from like a couple of movie studios, a music producer, an NBA star.
Yeah, NBA. Don't
There's
forget.
an NBA star. I think, the makers of that blanket that has the sleeves.
No more descriptive
Yeah.
than that.
So I kind of had to take out a few things, but we did get in a lot of good puns and a lot of good references. My favorite kind of being, this time, the Vivre Believer, because I wanted to, piss off as many Justin Bieber fans and French fanatics of fantastical creatures as possible in one. So the Vivre Believer. Okay, next. And of course, Schwarzenegger. I mean, this is my favorite one. This is an old one. Get to the copper. Get to the copper. But
don't have to
I had
do
like
that.
Had Me Some Fun, Riddle of Steel, and of course the classic, if it bleeds, we could kill it. I need your clothes, your boots, and your broom.
All right, let's move on.
Okay. And then this is your favorite, Matt.
See, they agree with
Yeah,
me.
I know, and I'm kind of here to apologize about that. After this was released, Matt was just like, oh my God, people have been spamming my Twitter with all this hate mail. Why did you do this to me, Koji? Yeah, I gotta do it, man. It's for you.
So for those of you who don't know, he had a reference when you received your in-game items for the Stormblood pre-orders of the Red Mage Minion.
The Red Mage Minion.
It said, "May you forget about Blue Mage."
Yeah.
I was like, I saw as a player, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a problem.
All right. Yeah, the bugs. This I have to apologize for. I love the lore book, and everyone loves the lore book, and at least the people get it. I love the response to it, but I have to. I mean, all the bugs, man. And this is like after a fan fest. I was like, get up on stage and like, yeah, we had all these bugs, like thousands of them, but we squashed them all. Next day, there's like 100 bugs up on the forums.
We squashed most 90%.
90%. So we got 90%. 90%.
Yay.
All right. Next, the Hamilton references. There's a lot of Hamilton references. Lots of
are.
subtle.
Yeah, very, very subtle. Yeah.
That was all Crow. He had watched Hamilton. He loved it, and so he had to put that in there. And then, of course, the Simpson references. Yes. And my favorite one, the crowning achievement of 4.0. Yes. This.
So I'm guessing is this true to the Japanese?
It's not in the Japanese. With the balloon text that we have here, I've explained this before, but the dev team has pretty much allowed all language teams to have fun with this. As long as there's no game hints in the text and they're not more than 4 lines, any language can do whatever they want to kind of just flesh out the game. And so, first
Flesh
time I
out?
walked
Wait,
in,
I'm sorry, flesh out?
Flesh out.
That wasn't. Was that intended? Okay. Sorry.
Okay. And so, I'm walking around this area for the first time, seeing these characters in there, and I just see this naked Rukunin. And I'm like,
Mostly.
it's like he's wearing nothing at all. Wearing nothing at all. And boom, it was done. And then I saw the guy next to him, and I'm like, okay, this can't be per. And then I checked to see what he was saying in Japanese, and the Japanese was just like, ooh, these are boxes where we put our clothes. And I'm like, okay. Okay. Stupid, sexy Rukunin. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's move to the meat. Let's get to the lore, the background stuff. So yes. Okay. I want to start off with one of the main things that I do on all expansions and patches, and that's what I work with Odasan directly with the naming and the backstory of all of the map stuff and the landmarks. Odasan will usually come up with a foundation for some of the main places, and it's my job to kind of fill in all of those places that maybe you don't visit on the main stories, but you need them to fill out the maps and enrich the world. With the main world map, this was actually one of the first things I started working on for 4.0. We worked on this probably about a year before the release, so we had decided all of this stuff way back last year. Because again, the scenario teams, the graphic teams need to know about these areas before they start creating content for them. So we had to do this really early. And there's a lot of things on this map. I know everybody's been, once it was revealed at the European Fan Fest, everybody started screen captures, looking at everything, translating everything from the Eorzean. We see stuff like this, that giant cloud whale. Ooh, spice worm, that looks cool. Oh, meandering giant, is that Titan? Who's that? Oh, floaty rock thing, that looks like that one place from FF11, from that, and I can't talk about any of these. Sorry. Yeah, I asked, and Ozan's like, so what I can talk about, let's kind of zoom in over here on the western side, the northern empty. So we're going to go in, here, and let's start here, and right there. So, you see, Old Sharlayan, you can read that. Up in the north, there's Airslint, which is the Rugadin homeland. But then we got this place right here, and
it's pretty tiny. I can't really. Can we?
So we want to CSI this.
CSI
style.
zoom
Let's
it.
go zoom in.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Is this better?
It's.
Oh, now I get it. Okay, cool.
Well, actually, I asked the dev team if do we have a higher res? And like, no, this is the highest res pick. This is actually how the designers drew it. I'm like, really? Really?
This is pixels, man.
This is just pixels. Okay, let me help you out. This spells out origin, or Nagin in the ancient Rugadin. This is an island that the Rugadin believe is the center of all civilization. This is where human life, not human, but life all came out. This is where everything started. They named this island Origin. It is very sacred to them. What is on this island? Speculate, but that's what this place is. So that's the first. Let's go to the next one right here. So on the Old Sharlayan, you have two islands to the north and the south that are named. So they're named, they obviously must be important, right? We have the Isle of Ham in the north and the Isle of Yorn in the south.
Isle of Yorn. Yorn sounds familiar.
Yes, Yorn sounds familiar because in the spire, in the peaks, we have Mount Yorn. And people that have played this and know the little backstory, it's about back during the calamity of water when Amdapor, Mach, they're all getting flooded. A wise man, Archon, you could say, from Sharlayan came down to Eorzea, named Nunkrep, and built an ark. It's like, I'm going to save as many people as I can, and with my wonderful magics, I will warp the ark to my homeland of Sharlayan. Everyone will be saved. So everybody got on the boat. He moved his hands, cast it. Ta-da! They were warped out to dry land. And behold, my homeland of Yorn. Until the next day, they realized it was just the mountains in Giribania. And so the other people on the boat were like, okay, this guy, let's just call it Mount Yorn so he'll never forget, his wonderful mistake of warping us to this, desolate wasteland instead of his
save
lush.
them, right?
Well, he did save them, but, Mount Yorn. Yeah. All right.
Next.
And so, next, moving on, we're going to go to the east a little bit. And I know that a lot of you are thinking, oh, he's going to talk about Daitenzan and Koshu and Bugyo. No, can't talk about any of those because Oda-san said, okay, this is in 4.123 X's. We're going to talk about, all of that stuff that's going on in Hingashi. You're going to get lots more information on Hingashi in the story. So I kind of want to focus on something that you probably won't get information on. And that's this part right here. You see, points out if you get the Eorzean, it says the Ruby Tide. The Ruby Tide, that first area you all experience when going to Authard.
But isn't it called the
Ruby?
Is this another one of the famous Koji bugs, or?
This is not a bug. This is not a bug. This is actually done on purpose. There's a method behind the madness here. This is done on purpose because we wanted this to feel like, okay, when the first Eorzean navigators, explorers, went over to the east, they found the island nation of Hingashi. But then it was all closed off. Kugane wasn't even open. So they didn't have any way to get any knowledge about this island. Because if they got too close, the patrols would all attack them. And so they had to stay back. The only people from Hingashi that they could contact were the fishers that were fishing out in the sea. So they would come up alongside the boats, and they would talk to these people to get any information they could on this new island nation that they discovered. Those people, again, didn't speak any of the Eorzean. The Eorzeans didn't speak any Hingan, and so there was that language barrier there.
I'm very familiar with language barriers.
The language barrier. And so through that conversation, they said, okay, what is this place called? For the Hingan fishers, they're all about fishing. That's their livelihood. They talked about the Ruby Tide, which was actually the warm currents that carry all of the life. It's filled with life. All the fish go through the warm currents, and that's what they fish. And so for them, that's the most important thing, where they were, this is the Ruby Tide. This is where we fish and get all our stuff. It wasn't until years later when Kugane opened its doors, they went in and found out that, oh no, it's actually called the Ruby Sea. The Ruby Tide is just what the currents are called, that they found out there was the mistake. But by then, the map had already been made, and so they just decided to keep it. And we use both of them in-game. So we use the Ruby Tide when we're talking about the actual currents, and the Ruby Sea is the actual sea in the area.
So you can't just patch the maps.
No, we can't patch the maps. Dude! All right, while we're on the Ruby Sea, let's head down to the actual map. And so you can see Hell's Lid and the island of Zekki with the crab pots down below. There's actually one more thing that we named in this area that didn't get on the map, and that is that large rock there. I actually gave this a name. I thought of it as, okay, this is a large rock that juts into the sea. There's lots of pirates and raiders around here, and at night they probably, sail these seas, hugging the coasts to try to get out of the way of the Hingan patrols. Because it's so dark, though, a lot of ships would hit this rock jutting out there, and so they gave it the name. And they thought it was a large giant who had come down to bathe in the bubbling waters that were heated by the lava, and so they called it a bathing abe. Now, players familiar with Japanese fashion may recognize this being precariously close to a certain clothing brand, a bathing And so, yes, so did our legal team and Oda-san, and so they're like, yeah, you need to change this, and so we changed it to a bathing onio, onio being a demon, O being a man, and this is just now a bathing onio. It never got on the map. No one knows about it. We didn't get sued.
No legal problems.
Good. No legal problems. We're all good. And those of you who don't know a bathing, you might want to check it, and then you'll see basically how terrible I am.
How close you came to getting in trouble.
All right, next. All right, we'll go to the Azim step, talk a little bit about one of the name places in here. This is going to get a little bit into talking about not only lore, but localization as well. We have the tiny oasis here listed as Nama's Retreat. And this was meant to have two meanings. I wanted to try to be a little bit clever, give it a double meaning. So the Nama's Retreat being the retreat that the Dusk Goddess took when she was forced from the steppe by Azim, so it's her retreat southwest into the desert, the path that she took when she was retreating. But it also could be a retreat, like an oasis, because it's an oasis where you can get respite, so you have retreat and retreat. That's what I was trying to do there. I gave that to Oda-san, and he was like, oh, that's pretty good. I can't do that in Japanese. That's two different words. Why do you do this to me, Koji? And he tried, and he tried, and he tried, and finally he decided on northern edge of Nama Desert. So basically he just gave up.
It's basically the same thing. If you read between the lines.
But this is something that happens a lot on both sides. Stuff that he'll come up with, stuff that I'll come up with, that we'll have something clever in our language, but it just doesn't translate across. You'll lose a little bit of it. And it's come to the point where basically I'll do this, and he'd be like, Koji Fox. And then he'll do it to me the next time. He'll be like, I'm going to get you. The next example that we have in Yangsha, this is an example of what he did to me. So this was, again, is an interesting lesson in how we come up with our translations, because it's never really as simple as taking the first entry that comes in the dictionary. There's a lot of stuff that goes behind it. So this here, this location in English is called the Swallow's Compass. But in Japanese, it's called Gaenbyo. The JP name, the Japanese name, literally means cliff swallow tomb. But the cliff swallow portion isn't meant to be Cliff Swallow, but it's actually the name of the first king of Doma, Gaian, which actually comes out in the game. And where in the Japanese title it actually just says Gaian's Tomb or Cliff Swallow Tomb, the English title was The Swallow's Compass. A speaker of Japanese might be able to pull the swallow reference from the Japanese title, but if we just called it Gaian's Tomb in English, there's no real sense of swallow in there. And so, and we didn't want to try to force that into an explanation in somebody's dialogue. So what I decided to do here was that put the swallow reference in the name. The compass part is a reference, a subtle reference to the geomancy that was used when determining the precise location of this tomb. But put that swallow reference inside the name there, and then have it explain in the text, which it actually does, that this is the tomb of Gaian, the first king. So through the text, you learn that that Gaian is interred there, but then you also get the swallow reference here. Yeah. Or I could have just called it Northern Entrance to
Yeah,
Tomb.
just to get them back. See, it works both ways.
All right.
Next up.
Next and last, we're going to talk a little bit about the peaks. Go over to Giribania. You probably have seen this name on the map, Grim and Enid. And these names kind of appear, I think in the fish guide, there's some shrimp named after these guys. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about how this name came to be. There's actually a pretty cool story behind this. So you have these two lakes here, and this is another story about that, the calamity of water, where the seas were rising. You had a couple that was living in Amdapur, and they were forced to leave. The waters are rising fast, so everyone is leaving, and they see high ground off to the northeast, so they all head that direction. The roads, what few roads there are already filled with carts and people escaping, and so it was going way too slow, so people just kind of grabbed what they could, and they ran to the mountains. Didn't even take the roads, just ran into the forest, trying to get to high ground. Grim and Enid were a couple that was doing that, and they made it out of the water, and they're some of the lucky few that made it to the high ground. But when they get to the high ground, they realize it's nothing but dry, arid mountains, and there's no water. So literally, they trying to escape from water that's going to kill them, and they arrive in a land that has no water, and they're going to die because they have no water to drink. So they're wandering the mountains for days, almost about to die. They stumble upon these two freshwater lakes. Yes! And they run over, drink the water, drown, and die. 2 days later, another party finds them. Hey, that's Grim and Enid. Grim, Enid. And they're the names of the lakes.
I like it. It got really dark. It was dark at the start, and it got really dark.
Hey, I mean, you know, that era was a dark time.
Is there happy names in here?
Well, I mean, but that goes to the pass on the southern side of the peaks that we see. That's called Miriam's Luck. And this is the opposite
this
tale.
Is going to be
No,
too.
no, this is actually Luck. This is the good one. So,
Okay.
whereas Grim and Enid went off by themselves to try to find a pass, eventually succumbing to, their thirst and stubbornness, others were a lot more fortunate, and one of those fortunate people was Miriam. Now, remember, this is back in the day when they didn't have any flying fat chocobos, so they couldn't, find the pass.
It wasn't as easy.
They're all walking down in that, the area, and it's all dark, and there's like level 70 monsters, and I mean, these are all like level 1 farmers and stuff from Amdapur, and so they're getting slaughtered. No one's making a way, and Miriam just happened to have a lot of luck. She was fortunate. She found this pass, and then she went back and told everyone that, hey, there's a pass here. She saved a lot of people. Those people were able to make it through the pass and then form the settlements that appear in the peaks. She was one of them that helped him, and so it's her luck that found it, so they called it Miriam's Luck. So it's not all bad.
Yeah, finally, something nice happens
All right.
during the floods that killed everyone.
They're floods. That's what they're for. All right. Next, let's go to the locks. I'm not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the stacks and the pyre. This here. So you have the stacks and you have the pyre. And so why are they called the stacks and the pyre? The pyre one's kind of easy. I mean, it looks like a giant pyre. The stacks, why is this called the stacks? Actually, this is a relic of the final period of the last Alamegan king's reign. He got very, very paranoid He was thinking everyone was out to get him, so he ordered the building of these towers, and at the top of the towers, like Softwatch and Lockwatch, he ordered garrisons of archers to patrol those and watch for invading armies from any direction. They were supposed to be up there, and if they saw anything, then they were supposed to light an arrow, shoot the arrow down to the pyre. It would light, and everyone would know that there was invaders. It would rouse the armies, and they would get ready. That's what that was for. That was the pyre. The stacks was below this. Those were the people that were assigned to get new wood, keep it dry, keep it oiled. If there was a fire, take down the old charred wood and put up new wood, and that was called the stacks. When the Garleans came, they had their airships, so they didn't need those pyres anymore, and so they basically just decided to light it every night so it could light up the nights, because it looked pretty cool. So.
That makes sense. That's why most people do things.
Yeah.
It looks cool.
Okay, and then the final one, also here in the locks. We have another location that was named, but its name did not make it onto the map for certain reasons.
Which we'll get into.
So at the bottom, you see this little kind of storehouse or stronghouse, which are called the firkins. That's on the map. The firkin being a type of barrel to hold ale or honey. And the people that were stationed to these stronghouses, the locals, named them the firkins because they looked like those barrels. But then we have this massive stone ark that's near the firkins, and I had it that the local garrisons and the locals named this as well, and they named it the Limber Lecher, and saying it appeared like a drunk who had had too much of the firkins ale and was kind of going like this and touching the serving wench and feeling her up, and needless to say, yeah, kind of like this. Needless to say, Oda-san wasn't that impressed, and he was like, but he was, again, very Japanese and polite about it. It's like, yes, okay, we'll think about putting that on the map. And then 2 months later, when the map was done, I was like, hey, where's the Limber Lecher?
This picture, that's like Onizuka from our Japan team, right? Like, did you just take this picture just so you could reenact this? And
Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so
many questions.
Talking a little bit about, we got a lot of questions on the forums about the localization process that went into doing the stuff that's in the Far East. With the introduction of all these new areas, we got to have some fun with the language that each of the areas used, the areas being very unique. So for example, I mean, we'd already started it kind of with Doma and Hingashi, that we were going to go with Japanese names, Romaji for Hingashi, and then some of the traditional domain, we were going to go with maybe the Pinyin Chinese for some of those names, so that's why you have like Yangsha, which is kind of, it feels like it's, that from that area. And then, of course, we went with a sort of quasi-Mongolian for the Azim steppe. And again, this is, again, just talking about the language. When you actually look at the areas, the art teams and the graphics teams drew inspiration from a lot of things in East Asia and Southern Asia, Southeast Asia. But for the language, we decided to go with something that felt Mongolian. But we didn't always use exact Mongolian terms. Sometimes we did. Sometimes we didn't. For example, in all of the Azim steppe storyline, we used words like Khan and Udgan and Nadam. Whereas actually in the Japanese, they just straight up use the Japanese word for leader or shaman or battle. But we decided it might be a little bit interesting to use these actual terms. We also decided to make up some language as well. So you'll see the conceived terms like ka or kal or kot, which are all meant to kind of have that feel, but were unique to the steppe. And this was kind of because the steppe is made up of lots of different tribes, not just a single tribe. And because of that, you could expect a lot of the tribes to have different languages, and they're all contributing to this one common language that most of the tribes use during trading, but when they're separate, they use their own languages. And so that's why we wanted to have these kind of similar words, but a little bit dissimilar. Now, when looking at, the 6 maps of the Arthurian areas, we have kind of English translations on some of those maps as well. And you might think, why is this? I mean, if you're in Hingashi, shouldn't everything be in the Romaji, in the Romanized Hingen, rather than having English on there? Because you have things like the Bokaisen hot springs. Like, well, why is hot springs on there? Yeah. And this again goes back to what I explained with the Ruby Tide. Those first explorers came in, and they didn't know much of the language, and so they're going to hear the name of the place from the people, and they're going to transcribe that down. So when the guy says, what is this called? And you get this Bokaisen. So they're going to write that down. But if they write that down, someone who doesn't understand Hingen is not going to understand what Bokaisen is. So they also wrote, oh, wait, this is a hot spring, so you have hot spring. Now, for a person who does speak Hingen, they'll think, oh, Bokaisen, the sen is the hot spring part. So by saying Bokaisen hot springs, you're just saying Bokai hot springs, hot springs. Or like Shisui of the Violet Tide, that's like Violet Tides of the Violet Tides. Yep. But again, that's put on the maps so that people who don't understand the language will know what it is, but they'll also have the base word there. So if they're speaking with someone from Hingashi that doesn't understand English, at least they can get that name across as well. So that's why both of them are on there. I mean, I see this a lot. In signs, when I live in Japan, there's like the Arakawa River, which is, Kawa is already river, so it's like Ara River, river. And I'm like,
ATM machine, basically, right?
ATM machine,
there you
yes.
Go.
CG graphics, things like that, yeah. All right,
next.
So, I get this a lot too. Yeah, I get this more than I deserve. I don't hate Ted Woolsey. I don't. I mean, he hadn't busted his ass back in the day to bring localization to the forefront, I mean, all your bases would still belong to us, and a winner wouldn't be you because you'd be getting all that weird translation. I mean, he really was, the pioneer. And so that said, I can understand kind of why, some fans will think this, because it's like, oh, why did you change that? You didn't need to be changed. You're removing that reference. We could start with the Warring Triad. Back in the day, the Warring Triad were named Doom and Perturgerst,
yeah.
and Goddess. It's like, why don't you use that for 14? It's like, I mean, yeah, as much as I'd like to have called him Perturgerst, yeah. But no, at Square Enix, I mean, there are a lot of translators, there are a lot of different teams, and sometimes, the decision has to be made. Like some of the older games got retranslated, got brushed up because of, there might have been mistranslations. There might have been things like where things were too short because they didn't fit in older games. And so those things got changed. And while some of us grew up with one version and some of us grew up with the other, I mean, we decide to, usually as a department in Square Enix, we decide to go with the newest one just because we can't keep going back and forth because that's even more confusing. So that's kind of what happened here. It had already been changed to Fiend, Goddess, and Demon, so I couldn't go back to the older one. Another example that was brought up, especially for Stormblood, is Hien. And in the Japanese, you get Lord Hien when he was young, was named Shun, and then you have the mother Mina, and then you have Kaien. This is all references to Final Fantasy VI. The names were Shun and Kaien and Mina, but those were all changed for the FF6 version, which was great for FF6, or not, depending on who you ask, but they didn't fit Final Fantasy XIV settings. Which was already in Hingashi. We had already decided back in 2.x, before this character was even conceived, that we were going to actually do this kind of naming thing with this reference to FF6. That wasn't decided then. We already decided we were going to go with the Romanized English for the names, that everybody in Hingashi was going to be pretty much what they were in Japanese phonetically. And so when we got this in there, it's like, okay, we could have had Hien saying, yeah, when I was a kid, everyone called me Owain because it was a cool Western name. We couldn't do that. And so we basically, it was a tough decision. We knew it was coming, and we saw this like, oh, they're totally making a reference here to this, but we had to remove that reference. We had to just use the Romanized names because that's what already fit our lore for Hingashi. And we didn't want it to feel awkward, and we didn't want to have to like put in some weird backstory that wasn't going to be in the other versions to try to explain why we were calling them Owain and Elaine and Cyan. And so that's what happened there. Again, I don't hate Ted Woolsey. He did a great job. I'm really sorry. If you're watching the stream, Ted, job.
I'm sure he's watching. Everybody's watching. All right, this is...
all right, and now the most important.
I don't even want to click the button.
You just got to... This is the most important I mean, we're here. It's here.
Can I click it again?
Yes, you can, because
Okay,
it's Hancock.
That's better.
This is Hancock, man. So, come on. I mean, we all have a little Hancock in us. Do you want me to stop?
Just keep going. Just go as fast as you can through this part.
So, a little bit about this character's creation. After it was released, it was one of the most interesting characters. When we first got him, we looked at this, and the original Hancock that we had, the idea that it came up from the Japanese team was kind of, I don't know. We looked at it as us, it's a group of 6 foreigners living and working in Japan, and then you have this guy that was kind of like, I'm foreigner in Higashi, I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to have a big nose and be blonde. And we're like, I don't know if I can translate this because it makes us feel bad. Please. Please don't do this to us. And so I went to Oda-san, and he was very receptive to this. I mean, if you watch enough Japanese TV, you'll know that, that's just one of the things. They have the foreigner that's on TV, and they weren't doing it out of a spite or anything, but we talked to him about it, and it's like, we want to do something that we understand, why you're creating this type of character. We don't want to destroy that in the Japanese version, because it is a character that's recognized in Japanese culture and pop culture, and it's nothing that's bad, but we didn't want to completely destroy that. But we wanted to make it something that we wouldn't be embarrassed to translate. Like, we wouldn't be feeling that's like, oh man, this is terrible. So we talked with him about it. We wanted him to be, try to get him closer to who we were. I mean, when it comes down to it, Hancock is just a foreign guy that loves Japan, Higashi, and
Higashi.
He's over there, he's experiencing the culture, he learns about it, and when someone comes over, he's there to give you all the information about how Ao and Midori and blue and green are all, it's different but the same, and how Aibo can be translated as friend, but you shouldn't be because it's just a concept that your Western minds can never understand. He's that guy, and he's us. And we wanted him to be like that, but without being a complete Hancock. So, yeah. And so I guess you could say everything was according to K-Cock.
Don't clap for that. Don't encourage him.
This
is going to get worse the next time.
This was the first slide I made on this PowerPoint.
I know it
It's
was.
Everything was based
It was the first thing you made when you heard we were doing a panel.
Yes. All right, going to move on a little bit. We're kind of running out of time, but I wanted to touch upon this because I'm not going to go too deep into these because Soken will probably want to talk about them at some of his panels or talks. But I know a lot of people have been, are interested in the lyrics and they want the official releases so they know everything's going on. So let's talk about the music that came up. First, Lakshmi, Beauty's Wicked Wiles. Again, I'm not going to go into detail. It's pretty much naked snake women running around in this Conan the Barbarian-esque type of orgy goodness. Is kind of the theme of this song. No, it's actually a lot deeper. We talks about the dreamers being the tempered of Lakshmi are called the dreamers, and this is about them and you becoming one of them. But that's all I'm going to go into with this.
What about the singer?
The singer of this, yes. It's actually someone we hadn't used before. We just got a new member of the localization team. It turns out she's a really good singer. She's actually working on the Secret of Mana game right now. Just got back from voice recording. So, we gave her the lyrics in the morning, and she was an afternoon we recorded, and it's boom. She was done in 30 minutes, one take. It was amazing. She was great. Love the song.
Soken is so lucky he gets all these good singers.
That's what we hire. It's one of the prerequisites on Square Enix localization. You must be able to sing and make a fool of yourself in front of people. So, yes.
Doing great.
Next. So, next, the Garlean anthem, the Garlean territorial anthem. You probably all heard this early on in the main scenario in Stormblood. You only got to hear the first portion of it, but like all anthems, there are 3 verses, more verses, and with most anthems, they get progressively, they have this tendency to escalate as they get onto those usually unsung lines. And so the second's not too bad. You're talking, ideological, but you're still focusing on the Garlean pride, and yes. Then you get to the third line, and it's just killing everyone in this fiery conflagration of death and
Genocide.
destruction. No, Galvas, we shall destroy everyone and trample their corpses. And so, yeah, that's what we had there. And but as you all noticed, when you completed the liberation, you had a very similar song, but with different lyrics, sung by the Alamegan Resistance. And this is the Alamegan anthem, The Measure of His Reach. It turns out that even though you heard the Garlean anthem first, this one was the original song, and it was changed into the Garland Territorial Anthem after the occupation. This is because, again, this is about how the Garleans annex their territories. They don't go in, raise everything, and force upon their culture. What they'll do is they'll assimilate that culture there, but leave parts of it so that people won't feel as much hate to the people that came in and took over. It's like, oh, we have new leaders, but everything is the same, so it must not be that bad. That's what the Garlean Empire does. And so what they did was they took a song that already existed, kept the melody, kept some of the lines, but made a new song. And just as with the Garlean anthem, this also has 3 verses as well. But if you look at that last line here, that's actually, if you recognize it, the inscription that's on the statue in Ralgar's Reach. So this existed many, many years before, and then they wrote the song based on this, and that's why the song is called The Measure of His Reach. We've also got a lot of people saying that, oh, hey, but that first one with the Garleans sounds like you recorded it using professionals, but like that last one was like, that was pretty bad.
A little ragtag,
like,
maybe?
That's pretty, I mean, what's going on with that? And that is, yes, because the Garlean one we did have it sung by professionals, because, again, it's the Garlean army. These are people that train for war, they drill every day. They sing with pride because they have the fear in their hearts. The latter, the Alamegan anthem, is more that they had just won a war. They've been oppressed. They're tired. They're, bruised. They're hurt. They haven't practiced this song. And so is Rabble. And Soken, when he was recording it, he wanted to get that across. So for the Garlean anthem, they actually hired actual professional opera singers to come in and sing this. But with this, it's like, okay, we need Rabble. And who's the biggest Rabble in Square Enix? Oh, Localization. Hey,
yeah.
You guys, come on in. And so we did it, and this is kind of what happened.
All right, we're gonna
Soken was secretly videotaping this.
You?
Yeah.
We're going to play some audio. I just want to warn you ahead of time. Just be prepared.
OK。
Is he laughing?
じゃあ次、
That's Soken
今のは
laughing at us.
シャッフルタイム。
Dude, that was terrible. I mean, first off, that's a little tiny room. You've got like 6 foreigners, smelly of BO in there. I'm like waving my arms, and if there's no water, and Soken is just keeps. That was great. Can we do that again? There was a little bit of noise. Can we take that again? Like 20 takes, and he's just like, okay, we're done. And then, like, a day later, he's like, Koji, do you know any better singers that we could? And so, needless to say, yeah, we got some better singers to come in, and then he layered it, and it was, it still got across that ragtag, feeling.
Better singers.
It's better, with a little bit better singers, yeah. Localization. All right, so enough of this. We're going to move on. We asked the forums to submit a bunch of questions. We've got a lot of good ones, a lot of good ones, and we don't have time to answer all of them, so we picked about 6 or 7 from there. The remaining ones we're looking to probably answer over the next couple of weeks via the forums. So if you don't see one you submitted here answered, but you thought it was a really good question, because it probably was, hopefully we'll have that up on the forums pretty soon. But the best ones, the ones that got the most likes, we're going to put in here first. And I went to Oda-san, and I asked him for the answers. So all of these answers that you'll be getting here are from the mouth of Oda-san. For those of you who don't know who Oda-san is, Bandi Oda, he's our lore creator, our master lore creator, who was promoted to the main scenario writer, but he's still doing lore creation, so now he gets double the work, but same pay. And you can tell from that little frown that he has there. He's like, I need more money.
He sees the assignments piling up.
But yeah, so a little bit about him. Like I just said, he just leveled up to main scenario writer. Another thing is that before he worked at Square Enix, he was actually a writer of game guides. He worked at a third-party company that makes game guides. He worked on the game guides for FF11, I think, also Tactics Over.
The Japanese FF11.
The Japanese
guy, not
FF11,
the
yeah. Not that guy.
We don't talk
about that guy. But no, and so he's just like, he's a writer by trade, and he can produce so much. Like he just sits down and, here's a lore book. Yeah. So, also, because he was in publishing, he laments all the lore book bugs that were in the Japanese version, all one of them.
All one?
And he keeps turning, he's like, oh, that bug, it bugs, oh my God, that bug. I'm like, that one bug, not like my 100.
That was 1,100. Remember, because 1,000 is hot, it was, and then the 100.
Thank you for reminding me it was 1,100.
I just wanted to help. I just noticed down here in the corner.
Yes, and also the dinosaur. Oda-san loves dinosaurs. And I know if you've been playing from 3.0, you'd probably notice in 2.0, it's just regular FF monsters. But starting 3.0, we start getting like, pteranodons and thesaurus. It's like, what is this coming from? That's all Oda-san. He's just like got this dinosaur. I love dinosaurs. I love dinosaurs. And so he's the dinosaur man.
All right, let's jump into the questions.
So let's go to the questions.
What is the role of the Garlean consulate in Kugane? There are Garlean ships in port. Do they trade in Kugane? And if so, what do they trade?
All right. So, in addition to taking on the role of any consulate, as into seeing to imperial affairs in the area, or as well as representing the people from Garlemald in the area, Garlemald really has no interest in annexing Hingashi. I mean, they're all about taking areas in Ilsabard and taking areas in Authard, trying to get into Aldenard, but they're more interested in the continents. They don't really want, they don't care about these little island nations. But the reason that they're there is because it's a perfect location, because you have this situation in Doma, and they want to keep a close eye on it. So by having this presence in Hingashi, it lets them keep a close eye on Doma at a safe distance. Also, finally, Garlemald lines its coffers. They pay for all of their campaigns by selling their technology. So like their airship technology and some of their Magitech technology. Of course, not any of the good stuff.
Not the good stuff.
Not the good stuff. Not like the cybernetic arms and things. But I mean,
spoilers, sure.
The airships. Because they already see the Garland Ironworks already selling that, and so if they get in and lower the price, they can get more people to buy that stuff. They can get the gold and jewels and silver that they can take back and use to basically fund their war campaign. They don't really buy anything back. It's more that they're selling and they just want that gold. So that's what they do. Too long didn't read? This is the stuff. All right. Next up. In-game, Lise states that her sister Ida was killed 6 years ago. Was this before the events of the 1.x series or during? Has Lise always been the Ida we have known? All right, yes. Lise has always been the Ida that you've known. The Ida you know was never Ida. The only time you saw the real Ida, though, is if you played 1.0, Echo flashbacks. In the Echo flashbacks, especially that first one that you see in Gridania, that is the real Ida. So that, oh, the great beyond, I do believe we're dead, Papalimo. Thank you, the great beyond. Dude, it still amazes me that Papalimo, that was Nolan North.
That's crazy.
Uncharted. Nathan Drake
I didn't know
was
that
Papalimo.
Until you told me about that. I think it sounded a little bit better than that, but that was pretty close.
But yes.
What would happen to a Kester tribe member that chose to speak? Would they be punished in some way? Okay,
so for those of you who don't know, the Kestir, in the little lore blurb, it's that they refuse to speak. They don't say anything. So in-game, they always usually have the ... when someone tries to talk to them or they try to talk to you. And there are a couple reasons. They can't speak because they've never they never learn to speak. So when their children are raised basically in silence. And it's not until they're even like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old when they finally actually hear language, when they leave the tribe and maybe visit reunion, or maybe someone comes to their tribe to speak and trade with them. This is the first time that they actually hear speech. So think about it, like these children are being raised without hearing any vowels, any consonants, nothing at all. And so they don't know how to speak. So even if they wanted to, it'd mostly come out in like type of sounds. That said, even if one tried really hard and tried to speak, okay, would they be, punished in some way? They wouldn't be punished per se, but again, the Kestir don't speak for a specific reason. That specific reason is that they believe all spoken word to be lies. And so if they did speak in the presence of their tribe, basically the rest of the tribe would think, okay, this guy's a liar. He'd be ostracized as a liar. No, everything he said would be lies, and you'd never believe him anymore. And so they wouldn't be kicked out per se, but yeah, they would be liars. So yeah, too long, didn't read.
Does Domin or Hingan exist as a completely separate languages? Would speaking Japanese in-game count as speaking Hingan?
Okay, first question. No, they're not exactly separate languages. You can think of them kind of as like American English and British English. The first one being that origin language, the second one being people of that land going to another land, using that language but being separated long enough that words and pronunciations started changing a little bit. But people from both lands are pretty much going to understand what the others is saying. As for whether speaking Japanese in the game equates to Hingan, I mean, that one's kind of tough. I mean, Japanese users kind of already speak Japanese in the game, but that kind of equates to Eorzean, which is Japanese to the Japanese version, but what's then Hingan is almost indiscernible from Eorzean in the Japanese version, both being Japanese. So if a Japanese user in the English uses the Japanese, is he speaking Eorzean or is he speaking Hingan? Whatever. Let's just say using Romagified Japanese on the English client is Hingan. Okay. Or not, you decide.
Oh, it's very...
Too long, didn't read. Yeah, hype.
All right. There is a weird fan theory that Rogadin kids look like Hyur due to the Rogadin father and Hyur son found in the gold saucer. Are Ro and Hyur kids the same? What do Rogadin kids look like?
Okay, there's actually a really sad story behind this. So, like, orphaned after this terrible accident involving, like, a poisoned plate of Vongole Rosso and a Mambolja spy. The kid was... Okay, that's just another time. We're not going to talk about that. But, this child, the Hyur child, is not a son of the Rogadin. It's an orphaned son. So, it's an adopted son. So, I asked Oda-san about this, about, like, why there aren't any Rogadin children, because, I mean, you have everything else. And finally, it's like, oh, yes, Rogadin are going to come out. And then Stormblood's like, our children. Okay. I mean, Rogadin have been around a lot longer. You think it'd be our turn? Come on. And asked what about this, and he was just livid. He was like, I've been petitioning for 4 years to get Rogadin children in the game. Why do the devs hate Rogadin so much? I love it. He played Galka on 11. He plays Rogadin in real life on 14 now. He's been lobbying for child Rogadin, I mean, since time eternal. And every time, for whatever reason, the dev seems like, we'll do that one next. We'll do that one, maybe someday. And I mean, he's going to keep lobbying, and he's going to, finally, someday, we're going to see a child Rogadin. I mean, he already has, like, the design ready. He said, like, okay, I've already told the art team, I mean, they're going to be, like, super buff on top and have, like, really thin legs. So kind of like little tiny Macho Man Randy Savages. Okay, maybe he didn't say that, but that's kind of what I heard when he told me that question. All right. Next question.
It's going to come back and bite us. How did the Gelmoran civilization actually come to an end?
Okay, this is a really good question and something that we haven't touched upon. In the lore book, we pretty much say that, oh, here's what happened, here's when it ended, kind of, when people left, but we never talk about, that process. Why did it end? I mean, if there were still, half of the Elezen are still left down there, the ones that became the Duskwights, why didn't they just stay down there? What was going on? So how did that civilization end? First off, Gelmora worked. When the Elementals first told the Elezen and the Hyur that had resided in the 12s. It's like, okay, you need to get out now. And they all went underground and created the Gilmoran civilization. That was created not just by the Elezen or not just by the heroes, the combination of both of their knowledge. Because they worked together, they were able to create this civilization. And because they worked together, it worked. Many, many years later, when the elementals had second thoughts and they're like, okay, you guys have shown us that you can live peacefully amongst nature. Okay, you can come out now. Because they'd been living there many generations, again, most of them were like, okay, let's leave. The hero were the first to like say, let's go. Then you had the Elezen. They're like, okay, maybe we can go back out into the nature, back outside where we used to live. But by that time, a large portion had already, this has become their home. And Elezen being very, having lots of pride, they're like, no, this is our home. The elementals already kicked us out once. We made this our home. This is our home. We want to stay here. And they felt very, very, I guess, betrayed by their Elezen brethren and the hero that had helped them create the city when those people left. So they stuck around, being very prideful of their city and of their civilization. They stuck around and tried to keep things running. But you have a giant city underground that needed pretty much everyone in it to keep it running. But when 75% of the population leaves, things start to decay. They tried their hardest, but things started to break down. They couldn't be fixed. They couldn't create new things. You have like the Moon Tui farms. No one was there, not enough people there to tend them, so they started running low on food. They couldn't do anything. And so even though they wanted to stay, they were forced out. And they still blame that on the Wildwood Elezen and the Hur, because if they hadn't left, they still would have had their civilization. So the loss of their civilization, which happened over, it wasn't instant, it kind of happened over many generations, was something that really drove the Duskwhites to hate the Wildwoods. And then the Wildwoods had feeling all of this hate from, they're like, hey, why do you guys hate us? We're living up, why do you hate us so much? And because you have that conflict there, that's where all of the subtle, I guess, conflict between those two clans within the same race comes from. And the brooding angst.
Oh, yeah, the angst,
It's the angst. Of course, the angst. So, yeah, too long didn't read. They never die. They just fade away. Next.
Here's one we get a lot. Why is there another Halicarnassus in Deltascape?
Okay, so spoilers for those who have not played Omega yet. But as we all know, Omega, this is done on purpose. Omega creates renditions of the things in the stories that he's gathered. So it's all about the data, and then from that data creating something. That's what the Deltascape is. The Halicarnassus in Hauk Manor is named such because a regular person that was just happened to be walking by the manor and like, that looks like Halicarnassus from the story I read when I was young. Not knowing, again, if it was Halicarnassus or not, they just named it that. The Halicarnassus in Deltascape is actually built up of all of the stories of Halicarnassus from Eorzea, built up of that data. So it actually can be said that the Halicarnassus in Deltascape more closely represents the actual Halicarnassus that existed or not existed in Eorzea in the past that we actually haven't seen. So, but yes, it's just another bad creation. 80s.
Yeah, no, we're going to move on. We're going to move on very quickly.
Okay, our final question. This wasn't on the forums, but I get this all the time. Everywhere I go, it's like, dude, Koji, come on, Lalafels, why do you do this? Poor Lalafels, it's so delicious. They're so delicious. Because, wouldn't you want to eat a Lalafell? Look at those little arms. That's just like, if I was a hungry lizard man, I would want to eat. I have to choose between a scarab beetle and a plump, juicy Lalafell.
You'd go with the Lalafell.
Man, I'd go with the Lalafell, and it's just the secret sauce. That's good. That's good. All right.
Oh, we're almost out of time.
No. We got to do one thing, one more thing, because this is what we get. This is for you, Matt.
Every time we have any update or any patch or any expansion, this is the number one question I get from one person every single time that we do anything. Every letter from the producer live, every expansion release we get, where are the tacos in Eorzea?
Do you want a taco? Do you? Do you? Well, I asked Oda-san about this.
Why?
And that's exactly what he said. Taco? I was like, well, there's this guy that really wants a taco. And I mean, I like tacos. It's like, well, tacos sounds kind of more like a new world recipe. So, maybe if we ever have an expansion where we go, to the Western continent in the New World, we can have tacos. Or it's like, or maybe we can have like a mamulja, bring one back. Taco! But Oda-san is open to the idea of bringing tacos to Eorzea.
Finally.
Okay, that's the end.
All right. That is it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys all for coming. Thank you, Koji Fox.
Am I going to be down on the floor,
Yes.
like signing stuff?
After this, we'll be doing some signing at the show floor. So make sure you guys come by.
Come to the Stormblood booth if you have anything you want me to
Bring your
sign.
heavy
I'll be down there for a
lore
couple hours. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
When the spell